Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show, and today we have a beautiful guest on. I'm so excited to hear what her thoughts are and feelings. And mostly I'm excited for the conversation we're going to have, her history and what she's been able to accomplish. Absolutely incredible, award-winning, #1 international bestseller author and founder of the Vibration UPgrade System. Okay, so you got to I'm giving you a little hints of what she's going to be talking about. Some of the other things that she's expert on is how to break free from chains and how joy and money correlate in our new era. Guys, this is, you're going to get the idea of why do I love this so much and why I'm excited for this conversation. Another one that she does is a victim no more, challenging the power to live the life you want. I mean, think about that. What if you could actually live the life you want? So that's why we brought on, you ready for it? Dr. Alison J Kay. And K is not JK, but JKAY. Okay. That's a lot of K's at this point. I'm so excited, Alison, to hear from what you have to share. And I'm going to grill you with questions after. But first, go ahead and share with us where you came from as far as start even younger. How did you find yourself in this arena? How did you become a doctor? What are you a doctor of? And why are you so passionate about sharing this information and knowledge with other individuals to benefit their lives?
Hi, Samuel. We did it. Hello, audience. Hi, I'm happy to be here. All right, buckle up and just kick back and relax. So you want me to start with the hospital I was born in?
Sure, yes.
All right.
I was born in my grandma's living room, so there was no hospital.
Oh, man. Do you know what's interesting? When I wrote my first book and I was doing some of the research for it, the word living room comes from the fact that back in the days of more like one-room houses, the coffins would be displayed in the main room of the house. And so they purposely called it a living room so that it didn't get tainted by that fact.
Oh, I did not know that. That's hilarious.
I know, isn't it? It's different.
Death room. No, the living room. It's for the room of the living.
Yeah. Yeah.
Respect the dead.
All right. So let's just start with first I woke up my first day. And anyway, my older brother and I used to tromp through the woods after school. I grew up about 30 minutes south of Boston. And when we would do that, he'd be like a boy, typical boy. I had 3 brothers and no sisters. So I have 1 older and 2 younger. And he would tromp ahead of me, like breaking the already dead tree limbs. And I would just be kind of behind him, feeling totally connected with everything. I'd watch the creek and the little critters that fly and flutter above the creek. I'd feel connected to the trees. They seemed to have a breeze when I'd walk by it. So I took that connection into teen years, and I started to write in a journal. And it wasn't like a diary where I recorded what I did that day. It was more once I learned to meditate at age 19. I realized I was finding a way to talk to my higher self when I was journaling as a teen. And so let's fast forward a little bit. My mom, in my teen years, who I was really close to, and she was quite insightful and intuitive, suggested to me, Alison, you're really good with people. Why don't you think about going into psychology? And so I ran it by myself. It kind of felt right. So I did it. But 3rd semester in, I was horrified, because I felt like they weren't teaching me how to be the most happy, joyous, thriving version of myself. I felt like they were too focused on proving themselves in psychology as a hard science at that point. They were too focused on the hard wiring. They were too focused on the industrial and capitalistic application. So I left that major. I went into the next one that was about looking at how we get conditioned from advertising and marketing, how it gets targeted, and then we end up with the labels. Then I went into social thought, political economy, and looked at society from a political perspective. We'll get back to that later. And ultimately, I went to English Lit to look at it through an art, all of that I just said, through an art form. So I left the East Coast and went out west to San Francisco to go find master's, and waiting tables. Things synchronistically came in and offered to work in politics as a political organizer. So I did it because it felt so right. And so I moved quickly up in that organization, became a manager, and I was really successful. And they threw me into campaigns that was super intense. But the strategy was to get people elected, not who were going to say yes on environmentally, conservationally, or policies and laws that would conserve the environment or protect it. Instead, they were the people who would actually write these laws. It was a really strategic organization, the League of Conservation Voters. So they put me on these really intense races because they saw how much passion I had and how successful I was. And so I got the first Latina woman. I helped to get her elected to the California State Assembly. And she later wrote a bill that saved the last green space in LA Basin. Woohoo to that. So during that time was when I learned to meditate because I was so stressed because I was doing so well and having so much success. I was stressed.
Right.
As a result of them looking at my intensity and my passion and my success. So after that election season, which was in 92, I decided to take a break and I backpacked overseas for a bit. This wasn't my first time leaving the United States. As a senior in high school, I was an exchange student in Venezuela. I actually asked my teacher to start one because I wanted to be able to speak Spanish leaving high school. I didn't want to just know it from a book. So we created an exchange program. And so I lived in Venezuela for a bit during my senior year of high school. All right. So then I come back to the States after about 6 months and I go for my master's in public administration, focusing on environmental policy, graduate. As I graduate, I learned how to do my first energy medicine modality and had been teaching meditation to adults in a local community center. So, you know that feeling when you are pursuing something and doors are not opening with much ease and you feel like there is some kind of blockage that happened when I was going for the job placement. And so I sat back and evaluated, and what I got from the same channel I had gotten used to listening to was, hey, if you're going to make great change, Alison, you're going to it's better to work with one consciousness at a time. So I was aware that I could go into the classroom using my bachelor's in English literature and then do energy medicine and holistic health and wellness sessions and teach meditation on the side, which is what I did. So in the public school system 2.5 years. I, with a male colleague of mine, formed a club for kids after school, middle school boys who were getting labeled ADD and ADHD, called Stress Reduction, but I was teaching them meditation and Qigong. And it was a great success. I'll never forget. It was so cool. There were these boys I brought outside, took them by a row of hedges and a tree, showed them how the tree and the hedges interacted with me once I walked by them and did a certain something. And they saw it all come alive. So they realized they weren't just their heads and what their thoughts were at that point. And it was revolutionary for all of them. And I'll never forget it. So fast forward 2.5 years, on a Saturday morning, I'm looking at my checkbook before digital banking and not digging what I was seeing. Plus, I also felt like this is now my mid-20s and mid to late 20s. And I felt like I was looking at the possibility of a cage for decades ahead, that I was expected to stay on this path, stay in this career until retirement. And I was absolutely a no to that. I knew from my previous experiences, life was meant to be a hell of a lot more fun, a lot more enjoyable and adventurous and abundant. And it wasn't feeling that way. And at that same time, like within the same week, I was doing an energy medicine session with a client. It was like a third of 10. And we were both really happy with the results already that were happening. So I remember looking up to the ceiling and asking, okay, how can I get even more robust results for my clients? So these two things happened together. And within a matter of months, I learned about, because I was asking, okay, what else is possible here for my life and me? And this isn't acceptable. and I'd like to have even more robust results for my clients. I learned about the international school system. I did what I had to do, put my resume together, flew to where I had to fly to. A bunch of the international school directors came in from all over the world. Candidates like myself came in from all over the world. I interviewed with a bunch of different countries' schools and got a bunch of job offers and accepted the one over in Taiwan. Because at that point, from my work with energy medicine and meditation, I understood that Asia was not only the seat that understood subtle energy, but also was still operating and organizing its society based on its understanding of the holistic model and how energy is an aspect of life, not disregarding it, needing everything scientifically proven only. So that's where I was for 10 years. So I continued to do the energy medicine sessions and the holistic health and wellness sessions outside as my second income stream, whilst being a teacher and administrator. Eventually, they asked me to teach a psychology course to the high schoolers. I did. I created a course called Global Psychology. It was using the Psych 101 intro textbook colleges use, and then also the Dalai Lama's text that got produced every other year. He meets with neuroscientists, psychologists, biologists, physicists, and they talk about this. Did you ever see on Time magazine the picture of the monk with the electrodes on its bald head? It was years ago. So the first, I got to stop using that reference because it's gotten old. But it's really well known. So I thought maybe. So the first studies of the effects of our mind, our thoughts, our consciousness were done as a result of these meetings that Dalai Lama had. So I'm in there for 10 years. And then I taught AP psychology, which gave me a really good chance to revisit the stuff I had learned as a psych major, but now with the information and experience of understanding meditation and more the yogic and Buddhist perspective on consciousness in the mind. So it was really, I learned so much during that time while I was teaching AP Psych to high schoolers. So I leave, 10th year there, I start writing my dissertation for my PhD as a holistic life coach at a metaphysical university. And it became my first book, What If There's Nothing Wrong? Come back to the States, realizing after writing that book, man, if we in the West only had a better understanding of the actual science behind subtle energy and how our thoughts and mind move or block energy, we would have so much more thriving and so much less suffering in the West. So that's my main mission. And I've been doing it since. I have a multiple six-figure business at this point and a signature program called Magic Manifestation and Money Flow. Because when I got back, I was expecting to teach and help with spiritual path, yogic path, and health and wellness holistically, and people couldn't receive what I was focusing on. I was aware of it. I stopped talking. I asked them what's up. They were worried about money because of the market crash. Now, I had been tucked away, as I said, over in Asia, and I had increased my net cash flow by 60%. So I that wasn't an issue for me, but I became unexpectedly, ridiculously proficient in clearing the unconscious and subconscious blocks to not having more money. So that's about it for now.
Awesome. Well, I'm not that I'm glad it's over, but I'm so excited to start asking you questions that I'm glad we get to dig in.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I'm not sure where to start, but we're going to start here, I think. So first, I just want to highlight some things that you do very well and highlight them for the people listening, because they're magical, and there's not that many people, in my experience, who do this well, number one. And I don't know if it's natural or if it's taken a lot of time and effort for you to get good at this specific trait that I would just say has become part of you, because it's been consistent throughout the whole story you just told. But if you rewind this about 7 minutes, and listen to when she was first talking about her story with her and her brother in the woods and walking over the sticks and hearing them break, and then how she was very connected and hearing the stream. Alison is very good at painting a very clear picture so you feel like you're in the picture and in the story with her. And that's a beautiful trait, and it's something that more people would benefit from acquiring. And I think that it's, some people are natural. Most people are practiced. I'm still practicing, still getting better, but that was beautiful. And I'm so grateful
Thanks, Samuel, for that feedback. I'm grateful.
And hear it. And I'm grateful that my audience got to hear that. If you can get better at those skills, it improves every aspect of your life. It improves the aspects with your relationships, with your spouses, with yourself. Honestly, like if you hear or you see yourself in the mirror, let's say you get out of the shower, you're butt naked, and you look in the mirror, you get to start describing what you see. And how you describe what you see paints a picture in your mind. And then it creates, and this is what's so cool about what Alison does. She probably understands way more science behind what I'm going to say right now than I do, but that's okay. I live it and I experience it. So that's good. It's good enough for me, but that's why I brought her on here. When your words have power, their energy, they're transferring that energy, and then you're ultimately creating the next evolution of you. And so when you can start describing yourself and what you see, whether it's your relationship, your house, your surroundings, the clothes you're wearing, whatever, in a beautiful picture of what you want it to be, or as you see it, even if it may not be factually right. If somebody looks at you and you're like, no, you don't have a six pack. And you're like, no, I have a six pack, guys. Like you see them there. Yes, they're covered in 3 inches of fat, but I have a six pack, right? There's 6 muscles in there. I know there's 6 muscles. Every human has 6 muscles unless they
removed. 8. I'm a personal trainer too.
Right? They all have them in there, right? So to say that you don't have them, no, you just have to describe them and describe how beautiful they are and paint a beautiful picture. And that's what brings the emotion from facts into emotion. And emotion is energy in motion. And so then that starts to change the energy, which your body is a ball of energy, and starts to reorganize the energy into what you're verbally creating. So that skill that you have, it's beautiful, and more people need that in their life, in my opinion.
Can I step in here for a second?
Absolutely. Please do.
Okay. Because I think you're going to enjoy this based on the conversation we had before we started recording. So I want to do this, and you guys are going to benefit from this too. So check this out. I'm like an instrument. Like my body is at this point, because I have done this work that I do with others on myself forever. And I think with beyond the storytelling, the capacities I have to move energy and to have it move in a direction that's desired is innate, as is my intuitive capacities. But then I learned, because if it's innate, my natural capacities, I learned how to cultivate it. A lot of the stuff that I learned in Asia was to help cultivate and build these even further. One of them, I've realized when I'm with people in one of my programs, for example, my signature program, Magic, Manifestation, and Money Flow, a lot of the times on a call, so they off the calls have spent time, and they receive it on the calls too, getting clearings and activations on what I call the back of the house consciousness, unconscious and subconscious, where there's blocks. So that when those blocks are removed, this is the correlation now to the subtle energy system. Depending on what the block is about, if it's about not speaking up or afraid of being seen, that a lot of the times will correspond to a throat power center. Some people call them chakras. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take a side tangent just for a second, because I'm also a trained yoga teacher in India. There are 8 limbs to yoga. Only one of those 8 is the body postures we do in yoga studios all over the West. So we in the West took out one part of what are the 8 key parts of yoga. 5 of them are about working with the mind. Every yoga posture is designed to open a chakra. So if you think of a chakra as a center for the mind, body, and spirit where they all meet, and then there's highways, interstates, and side roads, meaning the ways energy travels into it, it's a power center. So if I go into that power center with energy medicine, I can clear more by going there instead of just focusing on something else. So chakras are a scientific term that's about 5,000 years old, and it simply means wheel. And what it means wheel for is that it's turning life force, or it's not. So if you have a tight neck, it's because in part you have something that relates to the throat chakra at an unconscious or subconscious level, meaning mind. And then the body gets blocked because the wheel or chakra isn't turning the chi, or the ki is in Reiki, or the prana, which is what we call it in yoga. So no life force that's electric and magnetic is able to get through to the musculature in that area, or the hormone, which is the thyroid. So the chakra system itself, flushing that vital life force energy throughout the system, is a preventative health 501.
Mm-hmm.
But that's aside. Okay. So when people are doing these clearings with me, now you have a little bit of a better picture. They're raising their vibration. Their consciousness is more purified and clear, more like a clear lake than a muddy puddle. So when I come in with the story for them to visualize what they want, and I'm asking them to work with not only their visual, filling it in, but the senses, like what you might be smelling and what's the expression on your face and what might you be hearing and how do you feel in your heart and in your belly? Are you happy? Are you joyous? Are you open and free in the chest area? Really getting them into exactly what you said, the description. But when it's with my higher vibration and the particular capacities I have to manifest that I teach others. And that is why I say I'm a fine-tuned instrument at this point, because I keep using it the same way. So I have really strong manifesting capacities. When your vibration's higher and you visualize, and I match that, you're giving the universe because your vibration is higher and your consciousness is clear, your connection is more direct. So when you do all that visualization and description, you're giving a stamp or an imprint for the universe to work off of. And then it understands it better and it can create from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I love your dissertation on that because you explained it more beautifully than I can. So thank you.
Oh, it's just another level to it.
Yeah.
It wasn't more beautiful.
That's why you're on the podcast. When I saw your one sheet come through, I was like, oh, I really want to talk to her about this. So
yeah, you got it to happen even with being in traffic and in my tight schedule. So I'm with you, Samuel.
No, I'm so excited.
Glad to be here.
So another thing that you mentioned, I've never talked about it like this, and so I want to know what's going on in your head here. So you mentioned something that you found journaling was like having a conversation or talking to your higher self.
Yep.
That was your experience of journaling. My experience of journaling, because I think most successful people I know have journaled on a regular basis at some point in their life or still do. Most still do. I will admittedly say that I don't journal as much as I used to.
Same here.
But I have like right here, 5 or 6 volumes of journals of programming. And when I married my wife, she said, how are you who you are? You know, you've got all this. I'm like, well,
that's lovely.
You can read my journals because here's 12 years of programming that I programmed me, right? I programmed me. So now most of what's in this journal, if you see it from the beginning to end, you see a journalistic or a process of how Sam thinks when he goes through trials, how he reacts, and it's written out. But I would say for me, rather than talking with my higher self, which I want you to explain the contrast of what you experience, what I'm expressing, I experienced. But for me, I viewed it as kind of how I talked about the story, but we are all individuals and we get the ability to create our future. And so rather than having a conversation with my higher self, which is just not how I experience it, doesn't mean it couldn't be, or I couldn't journal that way. My journaling was more of a process of this is what I'm creating. And this was the hiccup. This was the situation today. And out of it, this is what I'm creating out of that situation. And it was interesting because I was about 20-ish years old, 2021. And I was reading back my journal and I was like, this is less effective. Okay. Because what was happening is I was turning every negative thing into positive, which for me is very helpful in my psyche. Like for me to experience life in a joyful, loving way, even hardship, experience joy and gratitude that I get to experience hardship is very healthy for me. The downside is that I went back to try and give comfort or consolation, I guess, to somebody who was wondering how I got to who I was. I was like, well, I've been through hard things too. And they're like, really? I was like, yeah. So I go back through my journal and I'm trying to find an experience that I went through something hard, but because everything is through a very positive light, I was like, I'm reading the hardest thing that's ever happened to me. And my friends are sitting there thinking, yeah, you don't have a hard life, bro. I'm like, no, dude, I got all these things that like were really hard. And so I switched how I journaled in those, and I started expressing more of the pain side of the energy and the pain side of the conversation, not for me necessarily, but so that there was a record of those emotions. Because otherwise, I was programming myself not to not experience pain, but to be grateful for the pain. And when you're sitting there journaling about being grateful for the pain, it just doesn't, if some stranger's reading it, they aren't reading that you're in pain. They're reading that you're grateful for growth, even though it's really painful, right? So I had to start learning how to tell a story about my pain and be more vividly descriptive of the type of pain before I flipped it into the gratitude that I experienced for the pain. So that's how I journal, but I'm curious for you to either comment on what you just heard me say and talk about journaling with a conversation to your higher self.
So you know how you added in the or and then the and, you added in the and?
Uh-huh.
So what I was talking about in what you're talking about, it's an and. It's both. What I was doing was both. I just want to back up for a second because this is obnoxious, what I'm about to say. Warning, obnoxious. Uh-huh. But I wonder, and you can answer this, even though you're supposed to be interviewing me.
We're having a conversation.
Yes. I wonder if when we do things like write in a journal with gratitude for pain, for the growth through pain, are we not actually inviting more of that in instead of inviting growth with ease?
So what's interesting though, to comment on that, there was a point in my life that, and this sounds crazy to say out loud and people ridicule me when I did say it out loud, but there was a point in my life where I felt like my life was too easy. Okay. And there was a recognition that when my life got too easy, in quotations here, then I started to rely more on myself and I did not give as much gratitude and credit towards others or God. And as a result of that, I knew that I was happiest when I was in my mind relying, or at least having a deep trust in the greater universe, God, source, whatever you want to call them, right? So I realized that there's a benefit to having a constant faith and trust relationship with a higher power. And at the same time, I was going through periods of my life where survival meant I needed to be extremely independent. And so as I would start to get a grasp on my surroundings, my situation, and get more confident, then I would cut off the relationship with God, because that was a relationship of dependency and I didn't want to be dependent. I wanted to be independent for my own survival. And so I actually would pray for or energetically ask for more hardship so that it would put me down again, so that I would need to rely on God because I knew I was happier there. And that was my growth zone. But if I wasn't stressed enough, then I would take too much confidence in myself and I would lose my humility. And so, as you're saying, I wonder if we're asking for pain. I actively did ask for hardship at points in my life. And you can read that in my journal where there was points in my life where I'm like, I'm praying for more pain, for more hardship. And it sounds stupid. I mean, I don't know if stupid.
No, it doesn't.
It sounds counterintuitive. And now I wouldn't, now at this point, I'm 29, not that old, but I've discovered at this point, there's plenty of hardship to go around. I don't need to ask for more. But it took me a long time to discover that. And so it's been interesting. So I think, to your point, it was intentional for me to ask for more pain. I don't know that that was the right way to do it, but it taught me a lot about my life and myself. And I'm glad I have a journal record of that.
Yeah, you're a beautiful person, to a beautiful soul, to have that level of awareness and humility. You remind me actually of the brother that's right after me, not my youngest. I do know too, Samuel, that I started around 2016 saying, because I had for over 10 years a monthly free call to help those in need who couldn't afford to work with me. And I just stopped doing that last year. I did it for over 10 years monthly, never missed a month. And I remember around 2016 starting to say, if you are addicted to the struggle paradigm, I'm not the right mentor for you. Now, I'm going to say something really, Jesus has come off the cross. Remind me to come back to that if I don't take myself back there, because I just wanted, before we go there, because that's going to lead to a lot, I want to just answer your question about the writing. So I learned a technique called free writing. And when I was going for my bachelor's in English creative writing, so I taught that in the classroom. So I taught both middle school and then later high school. And so it was either, to generate an idea for their story in middle school, or it was to generate an idea for like their college entrance essays at high school. But the point being is that you're writing in a journal, you're keeping your pen. This is free writing. You're keeping your pen on the paper. It's better than typing. You always want to bring it down through physically like that, pen on the paper, and you could be writing, this is crap. I have no idea what to say. I have nothing to say. This is stupid. Why am I doing this? I have nothing to say. You could just keep writing. I have nothing to say. But at some point, something is going to pop through, because you're starting to pull it out, and you're starting, like exercise can quiet the mind, quiet anxiety. This does that kind of somewhat clearing on the worried, anxious mind too, like meditation. So at some point, there's something that comes through that is called the gem. So most people wouldn't, after like their first or second or at most third time, they wouldn't anymore be writing, this is crap, I don't know what to write. You'd see that they were starting to talk about their day, and then something profound would pop through. And then I told them to go back in with their highlighter and read through and find the gem. And then that became the theme for their story or their essay. So that's the talking to the higher self that I'm talking about. So you could be writing through. So that's why I said it's and. You're writing through your experiences, but at some point you have some awareness, some aha that pops through, because you're giving the space to allow your ego mind, which is what we call it in meditation, time to express itself, to whine, to complain, because that's what it loves to do, because it's trying to keep us protected from the unknown. So it complains about the new, it protects against the unknown, it worries, goes into anxiety. So if it gives it the space to complain, it kind of gets quieter, and then the higher self can pop through. Okay, so there's that answer. Does that help?
Yes. No, absolutely. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay. So I got asked to do a radio show on Voice America like 2011 when I was back for a year. And they asked me to do a radio show weekly on the Mayan galactic alignment on December 21st, 2012. I was doing nothing in my public facing business with that, around that. I was taking people, because I live on the west coast of Florida. So it's just a hop, skip, and a jump across the Gulf of Mexico to the Yucatan, to the Mayan ruins. I had been taking clients there on private VIP trips and retreats, but that wasn't public facing. It was only word of mouth. So nonetheless, I'm like, okay, let me consider for 48 hours and get back to you. And I did. And it was intuitively my whole body. Yes, do this. Yes, something's behind this. So I started interviewing experts about this December 21st, 2012 phenomena. And I learned that it wasn't just the Mayans that was saying this is the end of a 26,000 year era predicted way back. It was also Yogi Bhajan, one of the main yoga teachers in the whole entire canon of yoga, whether it's India or the West, saying that this is the end of one yuga, which means era in Sanskrit, and the beginning of another yuga in 2012. Professional astrologers, 2012, ending of the Piscean age, beginning of the Aquarian age. So blah, blah, blah. Interviewed a bunch of experts, learned more about it, got invited to be on a yoga cruise as a meditation teacher and energy medicine professional down to Chichen Itza. That's the ruin that you see. You got it, you're nodding. So we're there. We get special permission to be with a Mayan shaman on that day. The ground is like vibrating through my bare feet. TV crews are everywhere. I had people see me as far away on TV as Poland. It was a big deal. But what I learned was that the end of the era of destruction, and now we're in the beginning of the era of construction. So it's a 20-year window, 2012 to 2032. And we're halfway through it right now. And central to all of this is using our free will at levels we've never used it before. Recognizing the fact that we're choosing every moment. We made a choice to go for it. even though with the time constraints. But we're also not making choices. We're avoiding choices. We're making choices by making no choice. But our power is in our choice. And when we do it from a certain level of consciousness and vibration, we're creating our lives. And that's not about struggle. That's not about creating out of struggle. So that's the old era. And around 2013, after going to a lot of the different mind ruins, taking clients on these retreats, I was standing under the night sky doing my normal prayer work. And I heard Jesus has come off the cross. Now, I didn't know what that meant. It took me about a month to work with that in meditation and journaling. And I came to understand that it means that this is no longer about victim mentality. This is no longer about Jesus taking the sins for everyone so that you can just deflect onto someone else and blame and give away your responsibility. We're in an era now where it's recognizing our power, and in that our responsibility, but our power that we are in fact creating our lives. And that includes the struggle in our lives. You gave a conscious example of it, but the majority of people I work with I'm clearing out subconscious and unconscious blockages, whether from their parents growing up, imprints or conditioning or trauma or other sources, so that they can get more conscious and make more conscious choices and construct their lives, so that we're doing this together more in an aligned way, creating our new era that looks a lot more harmonious and a lot less of the yuck that we've been seeing for years. Yeah.
Okay, Alison, here's the deal. We're going to have to co-write my book. Okay. Cause I want to hear it from your perspective. But that's so funny. You have no idea.
I'm sensing it. That's why I went there.
No, it's so funny.
Trust me, really.
I'm smiling ear to ear. We have 2 minutes left. There's no, we're going to finish this. We are going to finish it.
I'm open to seeing what that would look like, a dialogue in a book.
So what's interesting is my capstone book. Well, funnier thing is, if you read my journals, it's about 2013 when I realized that I was not sharing enough of the pain in the life. And it wasn't helping. I had overcome the victimhood of the situations, but I wasn't doing anything to help others past it themselves. And so I was like, oh, I need to go back and share that there is pain so they can see that there's an overcoming of it. So it's funny. I'm curious, what is the next era in this cycle, right? If we're halfway through this era of construction, what's the next era?
We're not halfway through this era of construction. We're in a 20-year window. The last 10 years have been about crumbling the old paradigm, where there's been abuses of power, where there's been lies. All of that's been coming to the surface. You can see it in Black Lives Matter, Me Too movement, sure. All the protests in Chile and countries that don't normally have protests, so that the voices are heard of the average person, the people. All of that's crumbling, the old paradigm. And what's happening now is we're more through that cleansing phase, which not enough people did. So COVID stayed around longer than it could have gone quicker. But then this next 10 years is more as we start to construct the new era, which starts more so in 32, which is more like a golden era.
Oh, so we're constructing the golden era right now.
Now we're building. Yeah.
20-year gap is the gap between the old era and the new era, so we can deconstruct what happened over the last era and say, what do we want to keep? What do we not want to keep? Let's build more of what we want into the next era.
Yep. And recognizing our empowerment that happens through our choices, and that we have more responsibility. Sure. So we can't blame someone else for it.
It's funny. I actually, I'm always changing my thoughts and opinions, but I actually, for a lot of my life and still, I don't love the word responsibility. I think
no one does, man.
No, Alison, hear me on this.
Okay.
And then I'll let you go, because I know you got to go. In my mind, the idea of responsibility is, by definition, a victimhood word. It's the idea that you're only accepting the ability to respond to something else, rather than taking accountability and proactively making your ledger and saying, this is what I'm creating. Responsive people, lots of people can respond. They have the ability to respond, but the ability to respond presupposes somebody interjecting so that you have something to respond to. If you believe that you're responsible, by definition, in Sam's mind, you are accepting victimhood. And I reject victimhood. I reject the idea that I have to be a victim. I think accountability is a much stronger position of, I'm going to go create. I'm going to decide what I want on assets, what I want on liabilities, what I'm willing to accept, and how is my, if you look at a bank, so I'm in money, you're in money a little bit. Banks, their biggest assets are their liabilities. If we took all of the liabilities from banks, meaning we never put any money in and they had no money, then they would not be able to charge their interest on it, and thus they would have no assets. The only reason they have assets is because they're charging interest on their liabilities, which is what we've given them that they owe us back. And so, like, your biggest liabilities, hardships, pain, struggle, everything, and this is what I recognized in 2013, my biggest assets that I can serve the world with are my liabilities, but they're liabilities until I start turning the interest and turning it into an asset. There's a lot of people walking around with these emotional and energetic liabilities because they're unwilling to start sharing their liabilities and turning it into an asset. And so then we have this constant continuation of struggle because people are embarrassed to share their assets, i.e. liabilities, because they think they're going to be judged. When in fact, the most vulnerable person wins, and the most vulnerable person sharing with powerful energy and confidence that they experience something can move a room and completely change the outcome of thousands of people's lives if they're willing to be, and going back to the original part of what I acknowledge you on, share your story in a way that people can experience it with you so that they can experience the transformation and they don't have to relive it themselves. Mm-hmm. But they can learn. Wisdom is learning from somebody else's experiences. And so anyways, this whole thing, Sam, I'm so excited. It all just in the last
I'm with you on the excitement. So check it out. The reason why I started to say, if you're addicted to the struggle paradigm, I'm not the right mentor for you, is because I was seeing people come to me with cancer diagnoses that I would help them through, meaning the cancer would get contained or just disappear after work. Or they were coming to me with like multiple situations: divorce, death of a loved one, loss of job. And so I came away after years and years of dealing with this saying, what if people could grow proactively without needing crisis to force them to?
What if people...
So I have been all about growing proactively, people choosing to grow proactively instead of needing crisis to force them to. So I see the average person needing some kind of crisis, even multiple crises, to crash down their typical barriers of the ego mind, their personality level self, to get them vulnerable enough, shaken up enough to allow in another way. I feel like that's what the divine does. That's what you could say, or maybe it's our higher self that creates that, because really we're a soul and a body having a human experience, right, for a temporary amount of time. So one way or another, we got to learn our lessons or come back and do them again. If you believe in reincarnation or not, let's let that last point go. The point being is we're here to grow and evolve. And many people have needed crisis to force them to come out of the Maya, or the illusion, as it's referred to on the yogic path, of this 3D reality. So yeah, I'm totally with you. It's one of the questions I still ask. What would it look like? And that's what we're moving into, construction, right? We have to recognize the power of our choices. We can proactively create our lives, or we can be at the effect of others, which is what you're talking about with the word responsibility. Totally with you, mate.
Yeah. My gosh. I'm so sad we don't have time, but it's 6:00. I know you got to hop on another meeting. I love talking to you. And I honestly... Likewise. We could definitely schedule another time and further the conversation, have a part 2, because this was incredible.
Okay.
I'll send, have your person reach out to me again, because I want to keep talking to you. But thank you so much.
It's an honor. Thank you, Sam.
Follow her on Instagram, Facebook,
YouTube, Amazon.
J Kay. And K is Kay, and you can also find her on Amazon. Hey, you get to your next meeting. Love talking to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sam. Blessing.
Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.